I'm Jake. Like I said before, I work at Penrod. I am I do training enablement. I also do a consulting. I run this Milwaukee Salesforce Saturday group. I run Milwaukee Developer Group. I think 17 times certified and also Salesforce MVP. So that's all my credentials out there. But today we're going to focus on taking process builders and moving over the flow. As you saw in winter, there was the announcement that workflow rules and process builders are going to be making, or going to be coming to an end eventually. They haven't stated when, but might as well get ahead of the curve and start learning how flow works, and might want to take some of those existing workflow rules and process builders and convert them into flows. If you want to see the process, the workflow one, that's on my YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out, that was last month's session. So today we're going to focus on process builders and how you can take one of those process builders and convert it into a flow. And we'll take a look at a process builder. We'll take a look at a flow. We'll build them flow together and then ask questions as you see fit. Sound good? I'll take silence as we all agree that this sounds great. All right. So we're going to take I'm going to say a simpler process builder. We just have we're going to send an email and we're going to modify a field when the state equal Wisconsin. So we're going to take this right here, we're going to convert it to this right here. But before we do that, let's just talk about some of the comparisons between the two different tools. With a process builder, you set your object. You specify whether when the process starts, when the record is created, or when it's created and edited. You can turn on recursion if need be. You can set your criteria, you can do conditions, formula, or no criteria, and just execute the actions. And then you can set the conditions for that process builder. So it's things that we're probably used to seeing. This is fairly similar to a flow. You specify the object, you specify how you want the flow to fire, so the trigger event, which could be records created, updated. But we also have the advantage of doing created or updated like we did before, also just updated. So this will only fire when record is updated. Also, we have the option of when a record gets deleted, we can fire a flow. So that's some new functionality that we gain with flow. We'll note that this is what we call a record trigger flow. So whenever we want to build a flow, we're going to make sure we click on that record trigger flow. That way we know which ones that's the one that correlates the best to a process builder, is that record trigger flow. Along with the flow setup, we also can set up some entry criteria. This kind of matches up with the blue diamonds in your process builder. This right here is kind of a cool thing. You can set the initial criteria on the flow. So there's a couple of schools of thought when it comes to flow. You can emulate the process builder exactly. Also, every single one of those blue diamonds, or there's the decision nodes, you can just create if you really want to, you could create a flow for every single one of those. It's kind of up to you. The only thing that you may want to think about is if in your flow, if you are creating something later on that is dependent on a value that you updated or something that you set earlier in the flow, you probably want to keep it all in one. But when we get into the flow, we can actually discuss some of those points a little bit deeper. Some of the different actions or outputs that you can do with, this should say process builder, sorry about that, is that with a process builder, we can do, we can call Apex, we can create records, we can do email alerts, we can call flows, we can post things to chatter, you can call all their flows, we have quick actions, and submit things for approval, update records. So a lot of these things you can still do and more with your flow. So you're not losing any functionality by moving things from a process builder over to a flow. This is just a simple update. This is for email alerts. So these are just two of the actions that we're going to be covering today. When it comes to flows, we can do, this is just a update action, but we can use the update records for the match, that. We can specify IDs, we can specify that criteria. We can do, like I said, everything that a process builder can do, but we can do that in a flow as well. So some simple comparisons between process builders and flows. They both have a name, they both have an activate button, they both specify the object. The action group, that's the little blue diamond, that's your criteria. Whereas a flow, you can set that in the trigger. You can also just call all the records, not an ideal practice, but then filter things later on. You can also start the process and set intro criteria with the two as well. So they're very similar in that aspect. Fun fact, the process builder actually uses the flow engine in the background. So there's a lot of similarities natively just because they use the same tool in the background to run the automation. Just some quick comparisons for the actions that you can do. So like we can do Apex, you can call in the flow, you can use action, call Apex, you can create records, you can use create records. You can do email alerts, you can send email messages, or you can actually use that same email action that you use in your process builder in your flow as well. So there's some reusability to any existing process builder that you may have. You can reuse those parts in your flow. Flows, if you need to call, if you need to call a flow from a process builder, you can call it as a subflow in your flow. You need to posting to chatter, you can use your action again, the posting to chatter. Processes don't really make sense as a comparison into flow because processes would be calling other process builders, and here we would just say we're going to use a subflow again. So this process probably get created to a flow, and then you can call that process as a subflow. When you use your quick actions, you can use your action, use your quick actions. You want to submit things for approvals. You can also use the actions to submit it for approval. I'll point others out in a little bit here as well. And you can also update records, and you can update records. So the flow also has the new advantage of also sending outbound messages. So something that process builders couldn't do before, but workflow rules can do. Flow can also send out outbound messages. So that's another advantage of using Flow, because now you have all those tools at your disposal instead of just the ones that you have now. All right, let's go hop into an org, and let me know if this is, if you can see this or if you need to make it bigger. But this is a simple process builder that I built. We specify the account. We can specify, what we said before. We can do that. I just have some. I have a criteria here that specifies that when we need to send an email, when basically the record gets edited, if the status is active, we're going to go ahead and send an email out. And then we have another, so that's just email alert that we created for that. And then we have this other one where if the state, the billing state is equal to Wisconsin, we're going to go ahead and we're going to update a field called Batman to the account is in Wisconsin. So pretty straightforward process builder. But if we wanted to take that and convert it to a flow, it's actually not as crazy. I'll show you what it looks like, but then we'll build them from scratch. All right. So this is our example question, so on our process, on our flow here, we have our starting object here. So we specify the account. We can specify if it's created or updated. I think we did that for the process builder. This is, at this point, we have the additional advantage of also updating criteria. So we can give no criteria to this flow like we've done here. And this would basically mean that every time an account is created or updated, that this flow would fire. Maybe this is what you want, maybe it's what you don't want, but you have the ability to add conditions. So I could say my active state here, I can say that equals the value of yes. And if I do that, that means that this is only in fire for when my account, the status equals active. So if we go back over to our process builder, that would be this essential action. So we could build a flow that just does this step. We could build a flow that does all these steps. It's really dependent on what you want to do. I personally would say if you want to only fire email when this criteria is met, create a flow just for that. If you want this to only update when the state equals this, create a flow for that. Don't necessarily like you had to do in process builder. It's going to make things a bit more messy. You're going to have a lot of things firing in the background that you don't need to fire. I know it's kind of a different school of thought than what we had to do with process builders, but it's easier for the engine to handle some requests right out the gate of identifying that this flow should fire or not with this criteria right here, and then executing the actions that you specify, versus always firing this rule and then this may or may not fire, may or may not do any action. So I'd rather tell it to only fire when it's necessary than to fire every single time and it's only applicable 10% of the time. So we can do that. But if we just want to emulate that exact process builder, what we'll do is we'll just leave it as none, and then we can come in here and we'll see we have some decisions and we have some actions as well here. Our first decision point here is the our decision. It's that criteria that we said, and we're using the record as active, and we're saying it's equal to yes. Record is the record that triggered this particular flow, so this would be the account is, and we're saying the field is equal to active, and yes. If that's true, then we're gonna go ahead and create the email alert, and then back to our next step where we check to see if the account is in Wisconsin. Same type of decision point there. And then we go from there. And then once that's done, then we'll do update records. We'll update that particular record that triggered the flow. So it may look all cool and great that this is done already like this, but you're probably wondering how do you actually get there from the previous process builder. And that's what we'll do next. Any questions so far? Alrighty, so on our flow builder, like I said, we want to click that record trigger flow. Once we have that record trigger flow set up, we'll click this. I prefer the freeform layout. If you're new here, you may like the auto layout. Just notice that there is a difference between the two. Basically, if you use the freeform layout, you get the manager tab. If you use the auto layout, the manager tab is part of the actual layout. So let's first select our object, the account. I'm gonna completely emulate the previous process builder, and then we can go into how we can set them up differently. So I'm going to say records creator updated, leave conditions as none, like we stated before. So we have our starting point. Now we're going to do a decision, and we're going to pull our decision onto the page, and that would be is the account. And then we're going to give it a label of account is active. And then this is where we get to examine the first resources. So for what we're doing here is we want to look at the record. This is the account that triggered this particular flow. So we click into the record here, and then we have access to all the different fields that are on that particular record. So I'm going to go down here and look for active. You can't just start typing in here, and we select this, and then we click. See, the flow is smart enough here to see that it knows that this was a pick list field. It's saying these are two pick list values, and you can select the value that you want. So it's yes, and then we click done. So now we've created our first decision. We connect the starting mechanism to your decision. We have our decision set up here. We can now do our email action because that's what we wanted to do from our process builder. When the account equals yes, we want to send an email. If we go back to the flow builder here, what we can do is we can create an action, and we're going to drag the action over on here. If you already created this email action in your process builder, it's going to exist already. And I've called mine process builder to flow alert because I'm going to make sure it's something I remembered for this demo. So that is my action. I'm going to give it a label and I'm just call it send email. And then I'm going to put the input value of the record ID that triggered this. So I'm just going down here, click in record and type an ID and then grab the account ID like that. And now I can connect my decision to the email alert. So this is saying that when the account is active, send this email alert. If you're wondering how to create email alerts, it's just like how you would do it for any other tool. And your setup here, you just type an email alert. Email alert. You can click new, Just a reminder that you do need to specify the object. So your email alerts are only going to be available for the objects that you select for your flow. So if I create this one here, and I'll call this flow 2, select a random email template, and I'll just say send to me again, and save. This is a demo org or dev org, so everything you see in here is totally fake. So now if I go back in here, I may or may not see that. And let me hit save real quick. Just because I need to refresh this flow to get the new actions, because I've actually dragged the action on here right now. I type in process builder. I'm only see the one I already have. Let me refresh this, and we can actually get the new one in here as well. So drag this on here, and then just type in process builder flow 2, and then you can tell you same thing. Just for repetition's sake, we do this again. If we really want to, we could say we're going to send 2 emails off of that. That's perfectly fine. After that, I'm just going to remove this so we can actually emulate the flow exactly. We need to do another decision to emulate that next point in your process builder. So we're going to emulate this section right here now. So when the account state equals Wisconsin, we're going to come in here and go is account Wisconsin, and then is one thing you'll note is you see all these API names that do have to be unique. That's the reason why I've been changing some of the verbiage on, but just be mindful of that. You can't duplicate the same API in the same flow. You will get an error. They'll tell you, so it's not like it's the end of the world. And then we're going to do again, we're going to grab the account. And then this is billing state, and we're going to say equals. Click done. So what we can do is we can use the default value. So basically in this decision here, if this doesn't equal this, yes, it's going to move on to the next step of saying this one. If we wanted to send this email alert, but then evaluate like your next step of criteria here, you want to go from your previous email alert, take that line and draw it back to here. So I will send an email and come back and examine this next decision. So in my process builder, I was doing a field update. Let's go over to our flow here. We're going to do a update records. That's how we're going to go ahead and do an update records. So we're going to call this update admin field. And you can update the particular record that triggered the event. You can update other things. You can update anything you want with flow. It doesn't have to be a related item to this particular flow. You can update a completely random object that's not even tied to this. But for the purpose of our exercise, we want to update the same exact object that triggered our flow. So we're going to use the account that triggered the flow, which makes sense. And we're just going to type in the word admin in here because that's one of my fields. I just got to spell it correctly. I'm just going to type in a string value here and call it account is in Wisconsin. So you can use formula field in here. You can better just type free text in here if you want. This is totally up to you. It is dependent on what the data type is over here. This field is a text field, so I can just give it past as text. So it allows me to do that. Going to click done, and then I just drag my decision element here to say, yes, it's counts from Wisconsin. And now at this point, we've emulated that previous process builder as a flow. Questions about any of that?